Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America, and thank you for tuning in to our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. And I have with me today my co-host, Chris Agelastos, that we're going to talk about some kind of different topics.
Mhm.
I was thinking about it before I got ready for this show here, Chris, that I don't know if we've ever even, this first article, if we've ever even talked about this before.
Yeah, I
I
don't
mean, it
think so
certainly was
either.
in it's been in the news, and it was always kind of an issue, and an issue meaning like a question, and like, what was happening with this. And now, it looks like President Trump is taking a pretty well. Let me first off, let's look at the title of the article for those listening.
Yeah.
This comes from Zero Hedge. The SBA, which is the U.S. Small Business Administration, sends 562,000 pandemic loans to Becent for collections totaling $22 billion. So, what this is, for those of you who are not maybe not familiar, during the pandemic, the average person or a lot of business owners out there, and I know several of them, felt like it was Christmas because the government was just giving away free money. And there were some instances where it was very well warranted and necessary. However, I don't know what the overall numbers were for the loans for the pandemic, and I don't recall if I remember seeing it in this article. But I do know in many instances through either what I've heard and even some people that I knew, these were not necessary loans. And the question
Mhm.
was always like, is there ever going to be, a day of reckoning to this thing? And it looks like this might be the beginning of that day of reckoning. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of money, first of all, a lot of money that, that the were given out in these loans. And, now these are companies that are going, and if I remember when, and this was another thing, Chris, sorry, I'm a little all over the
No,
place
you're
on this,
good.
but again, I think the first time we talked about this, you may remember this as well. Became a cottage industry of people that were calling companies like me. I got several calls and encouraging me to take the loan. Like
Right.
they were actually brokering these loans, and we didn't take one. We're fine. It hasn't affected our business adversely whatsoever. We're status quo, but they were really aggressive actually about getting people to take this. And now here's where these businesses may be in a position where they're required or forced to pay these back, and in many cases I suspect it might be somewhat challenging or difficult for them to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear too, obviously there were a lot of businesses that needed these funds. Applied for funding from the program and used the money to keep their business afloat and to pay their staff and to pay
Sure.
healthcare premiums and things like that. So there was certainly a need for it. The real challenge comes in when so many people saw, well, this is, sort of like free money in a sense. Even though I may not need it, I need to get in there. People had FOMO; they didn't want to miss out on getting chunks of money. And I knew multiple business owners during that time period as well. That some of them needed the money, but some of them didn't. But they figured, well, I'll just apply anyway. I mean, if they're going to give me this money, for free or for really low interest, I'd be stupid not to take it, right? And so, what really happened is, even though these were framed as loans, essentially, and especially probably the Biden administration, because it was still a little bit ongoing when Trump was in office, but they sort of hinted at just forgiving these loans. Like, we're not really going to come after people. We're not going to collect any funds, because a lot of these fraudulent loans were reported during that time period. They just, I guess, as part of their policy, decided we're not going to go after people. It's in the past. It's hindsight. Let's not worry about it. And now the SBA, and of course, with the Trump administration trying to eliminate waste and really trim down a lot of government wasteful spending and fraud and things like that, is taking another look at these. So I'll be curious to see how far they actually get into it, because I mean we're talking 500,000 loans, and that's just instance.
562,000. Yeah. That's
Yeah, that,
so it's funny you bring that up because when I saw that, I'm like thinking to myself, like just let's say that you and I, this was our job is that we
mhm,
were going after loans like this.
yeah,
Our workload, we somebody just dropped on our desk
yeah, yep,
562,000 loans. And which obviously it would be impossible for us to deal with that. But that's when I saw that I'm like, where are they going to get the manpower to go after this? I mean, and even if they go after like only a fraction of them, that's still like you just created a ton of work out of nowhere for these people. And they're I would assume they're already doing something else unless they finished all their other work and we're just waiting around for something like this. But I highly doubt that that is the case. But yeah, this is a crazy thing. And that's, you know, if I remember correctly as well, Chris, when again the times I was presented or approached with, taking one of these loans or whatever, and when I looked at it originally, understand if, and I'm sure if we all remember back to COVID and the pandemic, you know, in the initial stages, especially it's basically kicked off February and March of 2020, excuse me. And in the first initial months there, it was still kind of an unknown. Like even though maybe many of our family members weren't getting sick, our friends, and there weren't all the horrific things that we were told about, albeit there were plenty who did, and as unfortunate as that is, but the bottom line is that you didn't know for sure what was going to happen, or were we just waiting for that other shoe to drop, in
right,
terms of what was taking place. But I say all that to say I reviewed the paperwork, and one thing that I recall was that when you took that loan, in the fine print, it stated that you are giving the government the ability to have access to your books whenever they want. Now, some would say, okay, well, they can kind of do that anyway. Well, I get that. If they want something from you, it's pretty tough for you to deny that. But you have some kind of leverage or recourse unless you've signed something like this where
right,
they're coming in with specific access to your books for this specific loan that you took and you agreed to give them that access. So it's going to
yeah.
be interesting to see what happens with this. So maybe it's the first time we've talked about it. And if it has any teeth to it, if they continue with it, it probably will not be the last because I'm sure there'll be some very interesting stories to come from it.
Well, they said in here too, just because you mentioned, going forward, how much bigger could this get? They're making it sound like this is maybe about 10% of the fraudulent cases out there. So they're saying, this is 22 billion for these 562,000 loans. They're saying that overall, they're estimating there are hundreds of billions in the pandemic loan fund that could be fraudulent. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this is just a headline that ends up going away, or if they really get into this, and then how much bigger it unravels as they go.
Man. All right. Well, let's talk in other good news. Let's look at our second article here from the Financial Wire. And the reason these are things, these two articles, the reason I chose these today, excuse me, Chris, was that
Mhm.
it's not specifically gold or silver or necessarily specifically market related, but it's just kind of reflective of the financial world that we're living in right now. And so this from the Financial Wire, the title of it is Wall Street could legally access your retirement savings in the next market crash. Now, you read that, first off, that would definitely give me reason to be like, wait a minute, what are they talking about here? If I have
Yeah.
retirement savings and I see this, I'm like, I need to kind of understand what's going on here. And some of this I was familiar with, but I didn't really understand the full depth of this. And what really, I'll let you kind of explain it, but the one part of this in particular that really um, kind of stuck out to me is that, what they're talking about is how the Wall Street firms will have access to people's funds because of how the balance sheet and the books work, and they're trying to kind of
Mhm.
fix that a little bit. But the big thing that stuck out was the private equity market kind of being, one of the issues here, because we've been hearing a ton about the private equity market and how there's so much vulnerability there right now. And this is one of the specific things that they're citing that could actually have some form of a detrimental consequence to people's retirement savings.
Yeah, and there's multiple pieces to this puzzle, but two of the main ones that they're talking about here, which I think maybe the average person probably wouldn't be aware of, is that typically speaking, when you're purchasing stocks, maybe through your retirement plan through a broker, you don't directly own those stocks in most cases. You're relying on the brokerage that you're working through to make the investments for you. But the banking systems, big commercial banks will allow brokerages to use a lot of those stocks and those assets as collateral. And so even though it's your stock, your investment company can use those stocks as part of their collateral for borrowing from commercial banks. And so the fear here is that if a brokerage fails, that secured creditors, these banks who hold those stocks as collateral, could potentially claim those as theirs, and fight an individual for the rights of those accounts. And the let's say that legally speaking, if somebody had the resources to fight that, maybe they could get their money back, right? But the average person that's working and maybe throwing some money away in their IRA to save for the future, and their brokers investing it in stocks, does the average person even have the monetary requirements to be able to fight a big commercial bank or a big brokerage house? I mean, absolutely not, right?
No,
And
no.
so whether or not it's legal and whether or not you have the ability to fight it if it is illegal are two completely different things.
Right.
And then the other thing they talk about here too, which I think people do assume, is that the cash that is in their retirement accounts, typically people will leave some cash in either money market accounts or different types of bond funds. People automatically assume that money is just sitting there, that cash is sitting there, and that's not the case either. The U.S. government allows these investment firms to use a portion of that money. They make them set some of it aside in reserves, but they allow them to use that money in other investments that maybe are a little bit safer than stocks, but not completely safe. And that would be like bonds and U.S. Treasuries. And again, if there is no major hiccup in the financial system, things keep plugging along and everybody will probably be fine. But like we've seen with bank failures in the past, once a couple of big bricks fall and there's cracks in the system, all of a sudden people are left in line, fighting and trying to get their money back. And that's the real concern here, is not if everything's going okay, is the current system going to work? Yes, it is. But if there are cracks in that foundation and there are problems, which we've seen many times, even through the last 100 years here in the US, that's where people could legitimately lose large portions of their savings with almost no power to be able to fight it and get that money back.
Right. And it's important to note or understand on that, like, if in fact, heaven forbid, there is a market downturn, a severe market downturn, it happens very quickly. So it's not typically something where by the time you figure out what's happening, it might be a little too late. And
Yeah,
again, it
you don't
speaks
get
to
advance notice of that, do you?
no. And then, so the shameless plug part of it here is that's where gold and silver come in. I mean, it's not something that it's an unencumbered asset. There's no debt tied to it. You have it. You can physically hold it on your own, or it can be held for you in a depository. It's completely yours, and nothing attached to it of any kind.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about that, and ladies and gentlemen, this is why our podcast is entitled "Secret War on Cash," because your cash, whether you realize it or like it or not, it is at war. I mean, there is just no end to the vulnerabilities that are out there. I don't say that in a thing to make people afraid or anything, but it's something to be aware of, because that's why you have to have that balance or diversification. So if you want more information, contact us at 1-800-289-2646. You can call or text that number, or visit us online at swissamerica.com. Thanks for the information, Chris. And for those of you who tuned in, thanks for doing so. If you're not subscribed, please do that as well. And you can also follow us on social media. So got a few different options there for you. Have a great rest of your day. We'll look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Yep. Take care.